I don't quite know how to say this, so I'm just going to come out and say it. I saw something the other day in the swamp that just confused the utter dickens out of me. There are two reasons that I like to go to the swamps. One, because I like to row down it and enjoy nature as it is supposed to be. Two, is because I am part of a neighborhood watch. I am not sure what to call it, but I basically go out and look for animals that are in danger and try to keep some animals away from poachers if I can. On one of my trips out, I noticed something lying in the way off the side of the river that looked like it may have been injured. It was laying on its side, and it was partially on the bank and partially in the water. I thought it might have been killed by something, or it was injured from something. I rowed off to the side of it and got out of my boat. I grabbed my snare pole out of the back and used the handle end to nudge the animal to see if it might have been resting. But it didn't move. Now that I was closer, it looked like it was a young crocodile, maybe only 5 months old. Well, the weird thing is, down here in America, we don't have crocodiles. We have alligators. So this looked very weird to me. I got my snare around where I thought its head would be, and I pulled it out of the water so it could breathe. When I saw that it wasn't an alligator or a crocodile, I don't know if I can describe it quite right, but it looked like a dog. Like a crocodile dog. I know that sounds weird, but that's what it looked like. It had the ears of the dog, the eyes of a dog, and a snout that quite resembled more of a crocodilian-looking thing. Except it had the trademark teeth of a crocodile. It was hideous looking. I also noticed that it had huge claws, and it had a mixture of fur and scales. What the hell? I thought. Was this some sort of science experiment gone wrong? Its body was green, but again, it looked and kind of resembled a dog. A very thick-skinned kind of animal. It was very hideous. Its mouth was hanging open too, like if it was panting. I took the snare off it and climbed back into the boat. I grabbed a beef jerky stick out of my backpack and opened it. I stayed in the boat, but I threw it towards the thing to see if the smell of meat would wake it up. I saw its nose twitching from the smell. It moved its head sideways to eat it. Whatever it was still very weak and small and frail, but I didn't know why. I grabbed my water and got back out of the boat. I slowly poured the water near it so it could drink. Normally, I think I should be terrified by whatever this thing was, but it was injured and in a state that was almost near death. I checked its body for any kind of wound, and I saw that it had a gunshot on its side. It was then that this creature, whatever it was, began to act very aggressive towards me, and almost coming back to life the closer I got to it. It started snapping at me and getting very lively all of a sudden. Maybe it was best that I step back into my boat, I thought, and so I did. And this thing started to become much more aggressive and hostile in nature, almost beginning to gain its strength back in a sort of second. That's when it started to try and stand up on 2 legs. Even though this thing was tiny, frail, and clearly hurt or injured, it didn't like that I was trying to help it. Even though I didn't care that this thing looked like a failed science experiment, it was in my inner best heart that I wanted to see this thing brought back to health, no matter how hideous it was or unnatural it was. Again, I've never seen a creature like this before, but the second it started acting aggressive and trying to attack me with as little strength as it had, that's when I realized I should get out of there, and so I did. As I'm kind of pulling away, this thing seemed to regain its strength so fast, and finally pursued me by jumping back in the water, swimming towards me. Listen, I know this sounds crazy and all, and normally I would tell you you're crazy if it did. This thing only seemed to pursue me for a little while after I got on my boat, and then disappeared underneath the water for good. I still think about it because this wasn't that long ago, and it was very weird. I've talked to some of my friends about it, and other people who are in my Animal Neighborhood Watch group, and nobody seems to know exactly what I'm talking about, or they think I'm making up the story. Anyway, believe me if you will, but this is my true sighting of something I would consider strange and unknown, and possibly paranormal. The only thing I don't quite understand is why it was so frail and weak and floating under the water, half on the shore, like it was yanked out of somewhere and thrown on its side, left to die, and then shot. Maybe it was stunned. Again, I don't really know. I'm just trying to get answers for all these questions that I have. Who really knows? Is it possible that this really was a science experiment and was pulled out here in the swamps and shot, left to die, because it was a failed creation? That is something that haunts me, still to this day. I'm posting this under a fake name and account, so it can't be traced. I know that probably sounds paranoid, but I just want to make sure. This needs to get out there so people can begin finding out about this creature that was so wrongfully made. It appears that you're well aware of Dogman and many of the other cryptids that exist. Well, about 4 years ago, I can tell you all more about the genetic experiments that began on hybrid creatures. These kinds of things have been going on for a very long time, so it's probably no surprise to you and people who are in that circle of knowledge. Things like this were fully field tested and were deemed to be ready, but something in the development stages went wrong. A specific breed of creatures that were part canine, part crocodilian. Some people on the team call them CROCDOGS, and I guess that is what they're called now. I don't know if there are many other sightings of these things, because they're relatively new development, but it is what it is. These creatures were designed to be super soldiers, to be used in upcoming and future wars. They were constructed and pulled from the DNA of Nile crocodiles and multiple species of canine, like German Shepherd, Retrievers, and Huskies. We thought that if we could make a chimera-like creature, along with the many others, it would have all the best abilities of both, the discipline of a canine, and would be a perfect companion and use an enemy for troops. They could have them breach and clear whole buildings of dangerous enemies. At first, the thought that it would have specific traits, scales and thick skin, and a canine's discipline and duty. During the testing stages, there were great results. In open combat simulations, they performed amazing. Their handlers were able to train them, just like they had trained any other disciplined animal. These were truly meant to be killing machines. But we did have to change some training scenarios. I don't know if you'd call them pups, but we'll refer to them as that, the younglings, of course. They would hunt down a target and subdue them. And our testing coordinator was bitten, and it didn't end well. The ferocity of these creatures was unmatched. They were extremely dangerous and hostile, one of which we actually had to pull down the power of their bite because it was too immensely powerful. Eventually, the project was discontinued when these things were getting older, and they became far too intelligent, possessing almost a human-like strategic intelligence, and began attacking their handlers. During other combat simulations, some of them were trying to help. Not all were a problem, but they became one. They had broken out and became too much to handle. Not long after things began to go south with the project, our coordinator was told by another unofficial branch of government who oversaw the entire project, was told to basically pull the plug. So many of our small branch of these creations were put down, so to speak. However, some made it out. I'm only writing this today because I found out one of them is in the wild, and I need to know that people need to be careful. I live in Georgia, just north of a testing facility that exists that many people probably don't know about, and I know a few of them are out roaming around. Again, these things aren't very old. They're just within the past few years. And I want you to know that these kind of chimera creations are existing all over the world. Some are getting out. Some are purposefully being let out. I feel incredible guilt over having a part to play in the design and creation and being a part of this project. Listen, I understand that sending this to you probably comes off as a creepypasta because there are so many that claim to have a story like I do, but are actually fictitious horror stories. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is my own horror story, and that these things are actually going on. So it's really up to you. You can believe it or not, but I'm telling you what I was a part of, and the creation that I helped make. I can't guarantee you how many of these things are actually out there. Just like Bigfoot or Dogman, there's an undisclosed number. But, just like their cryptid counterparts, they are highly intelligent, very hostile and aggressive, and masters of hiding and camouflage, especially in their swamp environment.